This tutorial will walk you through how to create a double exposure portrait inside Photopea. You could use this exact same method to create any type of multiple exposure or double exposure. Usually people use this with portraiture. And usually what you need is one image with a lot of texture and visual interest and color. It's a little bit graphic. And then the other image you need, the image of the person, is usually a very simple image on as plain of a background as you can get. I've used this image of a profile portrait just using natural window light against a solid. The background is white, but it's gone a little gray. And I'm going to discuss that in just a second. When you are using these, you usually want to stick with, if they are for portraits, you want to make sure that the person has some type of shape to them. If they're just standing straight towards the camera, there's really no shape. So by the time you build the double exposure, it's not very visually interesting. So profile pictures work really well. They don't need to be looking at the camera. Looking up, looking down, even with their eyes closed works well. Profile, just to the side, all of those are really good choices. And you need as simple of a background as possible, but you do not need it to be white. And I will show you how I'm going to customize this after I build the original double exposure. So here is my image right here. And if you look over on the right-hand side, you'll see that I've got one image in the background. And now I'm ready to go. So I'm actually going to go grab a picture I have that I took of the sunset. So Photopea works just like Photoshop in that I can grab a file and I can drag it and drop it right onto my image, and it will load directly onto it. So now if you look over at my layers, I have the background layer and I have my layer of the sunset. Now if my background image is not in black and white, that's fine. This will still work even if it's color. However, sometimes the colors will be competing with one another. So if your image is color, try this out in color, but if it's not working well, plan to possibly eliminate the color, and you would do that up here at the image, come to adjustments, and I would just come to black and white and change it from there. Okay, so back to the double exposure. So I'm going to I grabbed my image, I dragged it on top of the other one, and I just hit enter. I could resize it by stretching the bounding boxes if needed. Let me click this back on. So here's where I was. Now, what I need to do is I need to change the blending mode. So if I come up to the word normal right here, and I click, I will get a whole list of different blending modes. Now, these blending modes are what they're going to do is they're actually going to mask your whole image for you. And some areas, depending on their tones and contrast, some areas will blend down to the image underneath it, and some of the areas will stay on top. Darken and multiply are for darker tones. Lighten, screen, and overlay are kind of the three that you want to probably play around with this style of image. So the one that people normally start with is lighten. So let's click on lighten. So you click on the drop-down box and you choose lighten. And then I'm starting to get some of that interesting double exposure look. I'll show you what screen looks like. Also very cool. And if you want a higher contrast look, you would come to overlay. And so now see how some of the darker tones are peeking out. However, the brighter areas of her face are nice and clear. Now, this is a very simple double exposure right here. And here we are, we've got, we can see where it's kind of just on her face. This one's a little bit, it's on her face, blending through to different areas. Now, if I were to want this look just to be on her only, and my background to be completely clear, there's two different ways that I can do that. The first one is I just click into my background layer, or my person layer, and I choose the dodge tool. So that's going to be right here with the little burn and dodge. So turn to the dodge tool. If you notice, if you just hit the letter O, it will take you there. Once I click the dodge tool, whoa, my brush is really big. I want to get the brush to about a relative size. Now, here's where Photopea is not as sophisticated as Photoshop. you need to make sure that your hardness on your brush is very, very low, 10% or less. Otherwise, you will get strange streaks. And then I'm going to make sure that I'm in the highlights, and I'm going to change my exposure. I'm going to go to about 70-ish%. And then if I come in here and paint, what I'm doing is I'm actually lightening the whole area of the background where my person is not. So this is one reason, if you're taking these photographs at home to build your double exposure, that's fine, because we can actually totally mask this and clean up any areas you had that you didn't want to show up. And I just dodge in here. Okay. There we go. Just doing that as quick as I possibly can. Making sure to hit my corners. Okay. So that is one method to clean that up. Now, I could also continue to play around with that. Right now, I'm currently in my blending mode. If I click back up here, I'm at lighten. If I come to screen, it'll change it slightly. And if I come back to overlay, it's going to change it to a darker look. Okay. You could always play around with these if you wanted to and kind of see what you're getting. It's crazy. That's dividing the differences of the colors. See, if I come to darken or multiply, it's going to, again, darken all the areas. It's going to cut through the areas that are white. It does the opposite of what we're doing now. But still a very cool look. I'm going to come back to screen. I like how that looks. There we go. So that could be a finished piece right there. I'm also going to show you, I'm going to go back here. Okay. So I went back in my history and got rid of all the dodge tool that I did. The other way we could also do that is we could actually, if we wanted this area to stay bright and not bright white, we just stay on the top layer, come down here, click a layer mask, okay, come to our brush tool. Again, my brush is humongous. Let me brush that down. And then make sure I'm painting in black down here. Then I could come in here and I could just paint away the areas of the image that I don't want. I'm just using a layer mask. Okay? And then if I wanted to, if I painted too much in certain areas, I could come back in, paint through. I actually prefer the dodging and burning method to this method, but that was another way that you could do that. And again, we could do that, and then we could come in here, not difference, we could come in here and play with some other different tones. Obviously, I need to come in here with black and clean up that area. But there we go. And then I could just keep playing with the background. Maybe I want to paint white back. Okay. But just a little tiny bit. So let me go a little bit more than that. But I could actually come in here. Oh, it's not letting me. Sorry, guys. I could actually come in here and paint some more back. Oh, there we go. Oh, now it's responding. So I could come back in here and paint just a little bit back. I'm at like 70%. So if you notice, she's brighter. Let's see if I can. Let me back up. There we go. So there, I'm in white. Let me bring my opacity down to like 50. Oh, it's got to think about it. But then I could come in here and just blend. So I still have the whole image, but she's popping out. So that's another one. This is like one thing that's so fun about this style is that it's completely customizable. Okay. All right. I'm going to show you another way that you could also do it. So again, actually, let me back up. I'm going to go back to the very beginning, go through it with you guys one more time. So here's my image, just as is. And you just find the image that you want to lay on top. You grab it and drag it over. And it will just drop it right on top. Then I hit the check mark up here or the return and enter key, and it will be sized the same as the other one. The next step I go to is here at my blending panel on I'm going to click here on the word normal, and then choose either lighten, screen, or overlay, depending on the look that I would like. So there's lighten, there's screen, there's overlay. You're also welcome to try different methods to see what you like better. If I like how it looks, how it is, then I am done. However, if I would like to simplify and clean up my background, I can do that one of two ways. My favorite way is to then click on my background, click on the dodge tool, make sure I'm in highlights or midtones, and my exposure is around 60 to 70%, and then just start cleaning it up. One reason I like doing it this way is because if students are working from home and oftentimes they'll use window light to create these, or maybe they'll use some type of wall that has a lot of texture to it, they can eliminate that texture by dodging it. Okay, I'll just run it along the edges here, make sure I get my corners. Again, with Photopea, make sure that you come in here and bring your hardness down really small. Okay, so that would be it, and those would be the steps. At this point, you would then export. So step 1, open your image. Step 2, drag your other image on top. Step 3, change your blending mode to either lighten, screen, or overlay. Step 4, either clean up your background by dodging and burning, or clean up your background by choosing the top layer and making a layer mask. So I'm going to show you really quick that students can also get really creative and use darker tones. This is an image of a silhouette, obviously, of someone in front of a window. This one is kind of fun because students can do this at home. If they have a doorway or a window, then they have everything they need to do this. They can put a person right in the center, just like we have here, and expose to create a silhouette. They could also do this at night. They don't even need daylight. If they can be in a dark hallway and expose, then they can create this. So here is my background image already opened. I'm going to take this image of a succulent that I took yesterday. I'm going to drag it on top and release. This time, I'll need to stretch it up just like I would in Photoshop. And then hit either the check mark right up here or the return key. And then instead of lighten, screen, or overlay, this time I will choose either darken or multiply because I want to bring out the darker tones. If I bring up lighten or screen or overlay, I can still get interesting stuff. This time I would choose darken or multiply. Okay. And in this case, I'm kind of creating this really interesting sort of funky look with the window, but I could then come in here to adjustments and levels this time, and the darker I make the person, if you see that, the more it'll show up. So I'm kind of losing him a little bit. So in this case, what I'd probably do is I'd move my succulent over so I'm not losing the person. So in order to do that, I would just move that over, and then I would hit Control T. And I'm just going to stretch this. And I just don't want to lose him. So I'm just going to stretch that so he's in sort of that brightest spot. There we go. And now that's kind of creating a totally different look. But it is possible for students to do this either sort of this traditional way with the lighter side, or you could actually have them do it darker with silhouettes. And again, step 1 is open your image. Step 2, drag your image on top. Step 3, change your blending mode. In the traditional blending modes to use are lighten, screen, and overlay. Or if you would like to go for a darker silhouetted look, darken or multiply. Of course, they can always play around and create different ones. I'm just like randomly clicking ones now. And they can create different things. Let's go back to multiply. And there would be my final image there, which is kind of also a fun take on these. So there's two different methods that I have taught my students to use in the past, particularly when they're needing to create their own imagery from home. I hope that's helpful. If you have any other questions, please let me know. Sorry this is so long. I just wanted to be very thorough and show you lots of different ways to support your students. Okay, have a good night. Stay safe and healthy.